We are less than 3 days from awarding what I believe to be the most prestigious award in all of sports, not just college football, all of sports. The 2012 Heisman Trophy, of course, awarded at the Downtown Athletic Club in New York City. So what we're going to do right now is present to you our top 5 finalists and our winner, meaning that if we were given the authority of selecting the Heisman Trophy winner, this is who we believe is the best player in college football in 2012. This is not a projection of who we believe is going to win necessarily, but again, our top 5. And as always, we invite the debate. We love to get involved in the discussion and involve you in the discussion. So we welcome your comments either about who you believe should be awarded the Heisman Trophy or who you believe will be awarded the trophy on Saturday night. Looking over the landscape of college football on both sides of the ball, we see a number of outstanding performances, and we would like to give accolades to those players. So this is the honorable mention list quickly. Starting in the SEC at quarterback with A.J. McCarron out of Alabama, leading the Tide, of course, to another national championship game. He threw 26 touchdowns against just 3 picks, including what proved to be the saving season-winning drive against LSU down in Baton Rouge. Aaron Murray of Georgia put up great stats, 3,400 yards, 31 TDs, 8 picks, of course. Came into the Alabama championship game in the SEC with a number of criticisms concerning his big game performances, but played well against the Tide and came within 4 yards of winning the SEC and going to the national championship game as well. Of course, there was the guy who was tabbed to be the front runner for most of college football's first half of the season. Geno Smith, West Virginia, ended up throwing 40 TDs against just 6 picks. But of course, the Mountaineers lost 5 consecutive games, and there went Geno Smith right out of the discussion. He's got 2 wideouts that combined for 216 catches, 216 out of Stedman Bailey and Tavon Austin. Austin, of course, getting things done in the return game as well, but between Bailey and Austin in the passing game, they also caught 35 of Geno Smith's 40 touchdowns. We also have Marquise, who we believe to be maybe the best player in college football when looking at the potential to go on to the NFL, but we don't believe that this award should be about being a freak athlete who's going to make all the measurements at the combine and be a high draft choice. This is about production at the college level, and of course Marquise certainly fit the bill there as well, looking at his numbers at 112 catches, almost 1,700 receiving yards, and 16 touchdowns, but of course USC faltered at 7-5. So we leave Marquise, who we originally had in our top 5, down into the honorable mention category. And we'd like to talk defense as well. And we've got some freaks in the SEC who tore it up, had double-digit sack totals, and to Davian Clowney at South Carolina, Jarvis Jones at Georgia, and also want to give some kudos to Bjorn Werner of Florida State, who led the ACC in sacks as well, and was named a few days ago the ACC Defensive Player of the Year. Now on to our top 5, and the guy who took Marquise Lee's spot once we thought things over, and that is quarterback Jordan Lynch of Northern Illinois. This guy racked up 4,700 total yards, 24 TDs, just 5 picks, a total for Jordan Lynch of 43 touchdowns, and of course he has moved Northern Illinois to a spot in the BCS opposite Florida State in the Orange Bowl. So Jordan Lynch leading an 8-0 football team in the MAC Conference and a team that's lost just once this season onto the BCS. So number 5, Jordan Lynch. At number 4, we've got Braxton Miller of Ohio State, 2,000 yards passing, 15 TDs, 6 picks. Also did his work on the ground with 1,300 rushing yards and 12 TDs, so he accounted actually for 28 total touchdowns, 13 on the ground. Braxton Miller carried this team for the first 2/3 of this season. If you watched Ohio State play, they certainly got contributions late in the season from the defense and the running game in Carlos Hyde, and Braxton Miller took a secondary position, didn't play his best football down the stretch. That certainly hurt him. Didn't play that well against Wisconsin or Michigan, and of course the cloud of the NCAA sanctions hovering over Ohio State hurt him immeasurably, because if Ohio State's playing for a national championship, if they're in the BCS race, then he's certainly at the forefront. Otherwise, people could kind of dismiss Ohio State football this year because they didn't have to be regarded as a national championship contender because they were not, and that certainly hurt Braxton Miller, but we place him at number 4. At number 3, we've got Collin Klein of Kansas State, and flat out, I believe that Collin Klein would be the front runner and would be my choice had the Wildcats taken care of business the second to the last game of the season and defeated Baylor. But they lost to Baylor in rout fashion, 52-24. Collin Klein overall, 2,500 yards, 15 TDs, 7 picks, rushed for 900, plus 22 touchdowns. So he accounted for 37 touchdowns out of Collin Klein. And again, as we talked about, if you want to check out some of our Heisman videos from previous weeks, when we talked about the award early in the season and later in the season, Collin Klein, there was that thought process there with Kansas State that with maybe second-tier athleticism and second-tier ability and talent at Kansas State, that it was all on Collin Klein. And if he could deliver a national championship game appearance for Kansas State, of course, which has never reached anything close to that level, then certainly Collin Klein would be the Heisman favorite. But at number 2, we've got Manti of Notre Dame. The statistics don't tell us a whole lot there. Of course, a linebacker, difficult to quantify the stats against skilled players on offense, but 100-plus total tackles and 7 picks. So he actually was in the top 3 or 4 in interceptions in the country from a linebacking position. Now, what's going for Teo here is a number of things. He's a character guy, considered the inspirational leader, and certainly the face of Notre Dame football. Notre Dame back at a relevant position as an undefeated team, number 1, going to the national championship game, and he's the face of the resurgence of Notre Dame football. That helps him considerably. He came into this season with a name as a 3-time All-America player, so he's a great player to begin with. And of course, again, an inspirational player. All the stories and the feedback about Manti Teo is that he is a first-rate, class act character guy. And certainly in terms of gathering a story, the week of the Michigan State game, his grandmother passed away and also his girlfriend. And he stepped up big in the Michigan State game and put it all out on the line and led Notre Dame to its first huge win of the season against the Spartans. So Manti Teo, we place at number 2. Time for Johnny Football. It's Johnny Football time. Texas A&M's redshirt freshman quarterback, Johnny Manziel. He is our Heisman Trophy winner. Led A&M in its first year in the SEC when there were certainly tons of doubters of whether the Aggies could convert their style of play on offense to SEC play and face those great defenses in the SEC. Could they compete? Could they win? Johnny Manziel led Texas A&M to a 10-2 record, 2 close losses to Florida and LSU, and of course, that big win against Bama. The stats look like this: 68% passing for Johnny Football, 3,400 yards, 24 TDs, 8 picks, 1,100 rushing, and 19 touchdowns. Johnny Manziel accounted for 43 touchdowns, playing 8 of his football games in the best conference in America. On 2 occasions, he set the SEC total offense record for a single game with close to 600 total yards of offense. And again, we've cut and posted a number of videos on Johnny Manziel, so look back at those on our takes on those particular feats by Johnny Football. He's a guy that came into the season not necessarily going to be the starter when we headed into August. He was the backup on the depth chart to Jameel Showers at Texas A&M, but completely outplayed him, showed the coaches, and in particular first-year head coach Kevin Sumlin of Texas A&M, that he should be the man, and he proved to be the man. Of course, set those records, and he's a great story as well. Johnny Football, it's almost like a Bo Jackson kind of myth, kind of legend in Texas high school football of what Johnny Football is all about in the state of Texas, and Texas is owned by football. So the buzz is there, the flash, the dash, Johnny Football, and he certainly sealed it, I believe, on 2 occasions. He brought in the stats, he brought in the myth, and then he went to number 1 Alabama in Tuscaloosa and got the job done. Made the amazing throws, ran for almost 100 yards against the Tide, and pulled off a major, major upset. The first time ever a freshman quarterback has defeated a number 1 team on the road. And then just a few weeks ago, we got to see Johnny Football at a news conference because it's Texas A&M athletic policy not to allow freshmen to speak to the media, but they let Johnny Football, after the season had concluded, to talk to the media, and he seemed like a really engaging, nice guy, funny guy, and had a lot to say. Johnny Football, number 1 of Texas A&M, we believe he should win the Heisman Trophy. We also believe that he will win the Heisman Trophy, but again, this is all about our opinion on the Heisman Trophy. Johnny Football at number 1. We've got Teo at 2, Collin Klein at 3, Braxton Miller of the Ohio State Buckeyes at 4, and number 5, Jordan Lynch of Northern Illinois. Now, it's your turn. Please give us some feedback, some input, maybe some things we didn't consider here about the Heisman Trophy, awarded in less than 3 days, the 2012 college football's best player, here on Mark Rogers TV.